I always find it crazy just how impactful LSD Dream Emulator was on the genre of walking simulators. There's just something so interesting about seeing devs still try to hit something that this game did so well back in the day. While some come close, a lot usually just miss the whole point behind it. Most devs just think because they're putting weird stuff that makes it basically where it's the same kind of thing, but there's a lot of charm to LSD Dream Emulator that only it does so well. But what is that? What makes this game feel so different than all the other walking simulator clones? Was it because it was on an actual mainline system that people played back in the day? Or is it because of how elusive this game is now? But maybe it's also because of how little is known about this game even to this day. I don't think I could ever have the answers fully for those questions, but what I can say is I played many games that try to be LSD Dream Emulator, and I think I can finally say I found a game that does more than just try to be a clone of that. It does enough to be its own adventure game and actually have its own identity at the same time. The game we're tackling today is known as Fatum Betulla, made by the dev Bryce. This is the first game from his works we will be covering, as the second game will come literally right after this, so just stay tuned for that. I also bought this game twice, once on Switch and then the other on Steam. I didn't even know I had the Switch version until I literally checked and there it was. But we will be playing the Steam version for this review. Now, I talked about the game before in my fishing video, but I really just said it was an LSD Dream Emulator clone, and I kind of left it at that. It's because when I did play the game for the fishing video, I kind of just did the bare minimum, just so I could get footage and move on. Now, spending more time in the game, I want to say that yeah, it does have the same idea of walking around in first person in this weird world, but while LSD Dream Emulator makes a player feel weird and unnerved by random events happening with no real reason for said things going on, Fatum Betulla has 9 endings that all tell a weird and engaging story. I won't be covering all the endings as I want people to play this game and find them yourselves, but I will cover 2 at least. So we start the game off in this temple area that will lead us to a floating plant with roots dangling down just above the water. Near the entrance is a door that we can't open yet. All you can really do is look around and see the endless void just beyond the other side of the room. If you check your inventory, you will find a note that tells you a story about a child staring out to nothingness, pleading the cold to show itself. But with nothing in sight, she stood like a statue till teeth showed themselves from the endless void, and before she could react, the child vanished. Now this is when we start to see the game's first puzzle, and man, the puzzles can be very cryptic in this game, but once you really analyze the situation and read between the lines, you will soon understand the solution. With this, I decided to follow the note and just stare out into the void, till something started to stare back. This face with giant teeth, straight down the creature's head from top to bottom, as piercing red eyes with the tiniest black pupils I've ever gazed into stare back at you. The creature slowly approached the platform I was standing on, till all of a sudden, it just stops. You interact with it to have it tell you,
"Consider this tree and our land to be one and the same. A. Synecdoche. Both are kept between the living and the dead. This ancient water holds its roots in limbo. As such, everything here has failed to accept entropy. I have considered us to have not existed in a previous state at all. The plant is our fate, and its water our fuel. I will provide you with the tools to make alterations. Do whatever you must, but don't feed it with what you bleed."
We're then given a bunch of test tubes. And this is kind of when the game decides to kind of let you do whatever you want. So we go ahead and leave the temple. Now, being out here, if there's one thing Bryce nails every time, is the atmosphere. His games always have a sense of unnerving but comforting vibe to them. It's a balance I never see all that much, especially done well in these types of indie games. While I do like this take, this can make the game not scary by the usual horror ideas and standards that are set. But it's the weird and wonderful world that can help make up for it and give a sense of feeling lost or like you don't technically belong in this world. Which to some, this can be scary, but it's personally why I feel a lot of people didn't understand his other game that we'll talk about for another video, since it had a horror tag, and Bryce doesn't really make horror games the way most people expect horror to be. He feels more in line with things like Yumi Nikki, Neko Yume, or Escape Chasm. While these games aren't scary with loud in-your-face jump scares or monsters just attacking you 24/7, they are unnerving with the idea that the world is unknown and foreign to you, which can cause some type of unnerving fear. It's just not the normal, kind of fear, you know. I especially love when these types of games tackle subjects that may or may not be too deep for their own good, but allowing an area and worlds to explore for you to get lost in while still maintaining these ideas throughout. The only issue with this type of horror is, again, it's very niche, and very few playing horror games want to just explore a weird world without something trying to get you 24/7. It also can go right over some people's heads if the message you're trying to give out from your world isn't explained properly to them, which is an issue his other game suffers greatly with, that a lot of people seem to just not understand. All you can really do is walk around and explore these small areas you have, so if you're not enjoying that type of gameplay, well then obviously this game is just not going to be for you, because the whole idea and fear aspect just comes from exploring this really strange world, and not something actively trying to take you out. But from the nice beautiful autumn setting to this dark library with the smoking wizard, there's so many unique areas to explore that I really think you will find something you like here. I think my favorite area in the game is the cherry blossom part. It's basically just a spot with a huge Japanese temple in the middle surrounded by this really deep pond that goes on for miles, but it's just so nostalgic in a weird way. Like, if you were to tell me that basically Ocarina of Time's beta mats reported to the PS1 and these are it, I think I would wholeheartedly believe you on that. It's really weird to see how well Bryce does when it comes to just making like a Ocarina of Time feeling to his games. He does a really good job at that, especially doing a look that Ocarina of Time never even did, and somehow, every time I look at it, that's what I think. So honestly, great job on that. Then accompanied with the music here, which there isn't a lot of music in this game, but when there is, it's very just... oh, it's so beautiful, man. That's all I could really describe it. It's just, it is so beautiful. And what's so cool about this area is if you go to this bed inside and sleep in it, it will then take you to the nightmare world. And all the positive emotions from before are just ripped away as the music morphs into this just clashing feel of negative emotions and dread, to then be greeted with this as your visual for everything. I have no idea how he did this effect, but it's trippy as hell and I love it. Making everything distort and move around, reflecting what the player can see back to you, it makes you just feel so lost and just confused that you're just trying your best to figure out what you need to do here so you can just get out already. And if you're also quite attentive, you will notice stuff has changed from the previous version of the map we were just in. They're small changes, but they're changes nonetheless. One of them being the boat with the fishing rod will now be gone and replaced with this white-faced man with his guts hanging below. He asks if you know where a painting he's looking for is at. He comes back to see it after so long and it's driving him crazy since he can't find it. Now, I like the puzzles in the game since they're usually well made, but some like this can be quite obtuse. This one requires you to use the jar found in the autumn area to throw it at the painting to then take it to the nightmare world to throw it at him. I have no idea how you're supposed to think to do this, but I guess if people can figure out how to trap the Deku Princess in a bottle, I should have just known to trap the painting in a bottle. But I still feel this is one of the worst puzzles with actually explaining what you should be doing, because there's no indication that this would have ever worked. If you picked up the knife from the start, you'll be able to do the puzzle I did, where you can go and cut the fishing boat loose to get the fishing rod. This allows you to catch a fish to then feed it to the cat over here, as if you talked to him before, he mentioned how he's hungry and needs energy. Once you're handed the jar of oil, he'll mention stuff about his hometown, but doesn't remember too much, but the thing he does remember is there's a lot of fire there. Probably because of the oil, but I don't know. I tested it out on the water to watch the water change, and this is when an idea hit me. I went to the pond area and was able to contaminate the water with oil, and I'm so glad this actually worked, even if it serves nothing. It just feels nice being rewarded for something I thought to do on my own, as most games would have just had nothing happen. Putting the oil, however, in the temple water will grant you with this ending. Well, going back to the cat, another ending you can just get is where you just slice him with your knife or basically poison him. You see, the cat talks about how he's hungry, which is why you give him a fish. Well, if you decide to take the knife and go over to this gravestone and see a noose hanging in the nightmare world, you can then proceed to cut the rope down, and this will cause this guy with a hand for a face to show up. He tells you how he was a man at one point, but a fish ended his life, that a mortal's death never will matter since ghosts can never die. He's now bored and wants us to poison the future. He tells us to feed the fruit to a mammal with a beating heart, to then get its blood and give it to the plant, as this will kill it. Even though we were told not to do this by the giant face, we will indeed do it. We give the fruit to the cat and this causes him to die. Take his blood back to the temple, and this is when we get the ending of nothing. We got nothing, as now nothing exists, which is a weird ending, but it fits the game's weird aesthetic, honestly. We really did poison the world, though. History is now erased. There's nothing anymore. So I was able to have a small interview with Bryce, and I've noticed he has a really big fear of climate issues in the world facing an ending threat, as a lot of the endings for this game are just everything dying, or the idea about the climate facing an issue that is now unfixable. That doesn't mean some of the endings aren't lighthearted or just kind of weird. It's just something I picked up on that he really likes to talk about. But like I said, I'm not going to cover all the endings, as I only wanted to cover 2 here because I really want people to play this, but just let it be known that some of the other endings can get even trippier. So please play this game, as I really want people to support Bryce and try the game out for themselves. The only hint I can really give is that fish matter a lot, and then there's a secret path in the area where the cat's at. Good luck finding it though. So again, I said before, I did a small interview with Bryce, and I even got some insight on Fatum Betulla with even some concept art he showed to me, with one showing the pond area with the temple in the middle, another having the guy who's looking for the painting, and then the face from the start. I even learned about a change to one of the endings with your blood. The ending was apparently going to have the plant turn into a naked woman, and even Bryce had no idea what the plan was with that, so maybe it's for the best that that was scrapped. I even asked him what challenges he faced while making the game, and besides the comment of making the whole fucking game, he said that the Cherry Blossom area was the hardest area he's ever worked on because at the time it was the biggest area he's ever made. But his hard work easily paid off, as it's the best area in the game, at least in my opinion. I think Bryce's biggest talent is just making these weird nostalgic feeling worlds and actually making them fun to explore. While playing this and the other game, I really felt like I was diving into an alternate universe, where a PS1 game had unused Ocarina of Time maps, because again, that's what I really feel while playing this game, and it's a weird thing that I've never seen an indie dev be able to make me feel. Then being able to populate the world with characters that actually feel fun to interact with and having unique designs, it's just, man, he does a great job at this and I love it. I do like too that none of the characters you ever meet ever feel like a friend to you, but they also never really feel like a threat. It's again why I say his games come off as unnerving, because even down from the characters and how they interact with you can still feel unnerving to some extent. But again, it's never downright scary, which is fine by me. I know, again, some people won't like that. I do think it's also cool that Bryce can go from these games about basically the world ending and all this fucked up shit to then make videos about babies on a plane. It's why it can probably be hard for people to really read him and understand what he's trying to present to you, because just how different he is at presenting said thing. As even I had to ask him questions on certain endings for the second game because it really didn't make much sense to me what was happening. But I think it's nice to see that the creator himself is just as mysterious as the games he makes. It makes the game stand more on their own 2 feet because the creator is just like the game when it comes to that aspect. As I said before, I call this an LSD Dream Emulator clone in my fishing video, but after really spending the time with Fatum Betulla, I can say this game by far it's its own creation with its unique and otherworldly ideas. I'm quite excited to cover the other game he's made, as it seems to be his most mixed game he's created, but yeah. As for my final message to Bryce, if you see this, please make a giant Isobot character in the game or something, dude. Please, man. That's all I'm asking.